Hey, and welcome to the pre-show of episode 29 of DoubleDM podcast. Can you believe it? Nearly 30 episodes of amazing awesomeness and TTRPG discussions. Our interview today features two great guests talking about the game Trail of Heroes. All of the links will be found in the description, so you can check that out. But before we get into that, I want to announce to you that Why Your World Matters is, in fact, out on all podcasting platforms under the DoubleDM name. It should be the episode that released right before this one, and you should check it out right after this one. With that, I have nothing really left to talk about, but to ask you to leave us a nice review on Apple Podcast or somewhere else, so we can get the show out there. And now, please enjoy episode 29 of DoubleDM podcast.
Hello and welcome to the 29th episode of DoubleDM podcast, where I can fuck up every introduction ever. With me today is my lovely co-host Emil.
Hey.
How are you today?
I am good. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. It's 11 a.m. and I was up till like 4 a.m.
Oh boy.
Normal.
Yeah, just normal stuff, right?
Yeah.
So did anything happen to you? Anything good, bad, or whatever in the last week?
I don't know if you would call this good. Probably bad. I've had no sessions since we last recorded. Or anything, basically. My next session isn't even this week. It's next week, Friday. So with that, I have 3 weeks without TTRPG nearly behind me.
Yeah. So you're looking forward to next Friday, right?
Yeah, definitely. But it's probably one of the last sessions I will DM in a time, at least for campaigns, because we have election time in Germany right now, right? And a few of my players are election helpers, meaning
I see.
They basically have no free time now. No.
Yeah.
And we said maybe we will play without the players. Maybe we don't. So we don't know if we will play. But I have 2 other campaigns that are basically ready to start, and a one-shot with you. Yeah.
Which I'm excited for.
I am pretty much still set on sessions. Yeah, we have that one-shot. The Jujutsu Kaisen one-shot in the Besom, or Big Eyes Small Mouth TTRPG 4th edition, which I am pretty excited for, to see what you guys create and what chaotic fun we're gonna have.
Yeah, there's gonna happen some weird shit, I guess. Because I'm weird, everybody else who's playing is weird, but in a chaotic good kind of way.
Were you all chaotic evil? No.
Yeah, but I didn't mean chaotic good alignment. We are chaotically, but in a good way, but still chaotic evil. I have actually 2 sessions coming up tomorrow. One from 12 a.m. to 6 p.m. and one from 7 p.m. till open end.
What's that supposed to mean? Open end?
Yeah, around 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
But we don't have a set time for that. And yeah, I haven't prepped anything yet. So, but it will be...
I mean, who needs to prep anyway?
Yeah, I just have one plot point prepared, or I want to prepare one plot point for tomorrow evening, where they get into a town and they hopefully will love it in this town. They then venture forth to their adventure, and when they come back, they found the town deserted. And if they check every room, there's just corpses lying in the beds. But if they use a light like a torch or something like that, they see that the shadow of the person is missing. Then they hunker down in the tavern, they make a fire, and suddenly the shadows are starting to creep towards them. So there will basically be a colony of shadows.
You sick fuck.
Yeah, but I'm excited how they will react.
Yeah, I am too. At least I would like to hear that.
Yeah, you will definitely hear about it.
Because this episode comes out after that session is already done, more or less.
Yeah.
So I can ask you, why? What happened? Or what's supposed to happen?
I actually don't know yet, because the unraveling of this plot will come in later sessions. I will just introduce the town right now, and then a few sessions along the way they will return.
Mm-hmm.
But they will just get introduced today.
Okay,
Or
then
tomorrow.
let me ask you something.
Yeah.
You said they are gonna love it there. How are you gonna do that?
I'm just gonna play a bit into their backstories, like why they do the adventure stuff they do, and try to create for every person there a small atmosphere specifically for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, give me an example.
One is big on books, really into historical books. So there will be some sort of historical bookstore with specific items for her research. And one is an artificer, so there will probably be some sort of weird tinkering blacksmith sort of shop.
Mm-hmm.
And they will hopefully, when they see this, interact with it. Then I can use the NPCs from or the shopkeepers to make them, or to try to give them a warm feeling of this town.
And then you destroy their dreams.
Yes, as you do.
Dungeon masters are the most fucked up people in the world.
Yeah.
Period. I had something very interesting. I had mid-campaign check-ins with my players. I wanted to make sure that while we were playing for like half a year already, I wanted to make sure that I give them the opportunity to talk it out with me if there has anything changed in their expectations that we talked about in session 0, if there is anything that they want to talk about but don't want to say while we're in the session, if there's anything wrong with the style I play for them, and yeah. And I basically had first up only solo check-ins, every player at once, alone, and then I had a full group check-in to see how that goes. And generally, the first thing is they all like the way that I dungeon master for them, and that's the most important part, that they have fun. But there's still more to talk about, right? My opinion on this is always, yes, the highest order is everyone is having fun at the table, but how are you gonna improve that? Because as long as everyone's having fun, you don't have to improve. When you say as long as everyone is having fun, you are not doing it wrong. That's not how this works, right? There needs to be some sort of quantification of how can I get better? What am I doing wrong while you are still having fun? For example, one of my players said that they didn't like combat that much. Rather that they have no place in combat as it feels for them. So now I know why they are having fun playing. Combat is always for them a moment where they feel, I don't know what to do. I am scared to do something wrong. And then I know what to do. I first of all need to make sure that they are not scared of trying something, which I talked with them about for like half an hour, that they have nothing to be afraid of. And we went through some scenarios where we could talk about what happened and how what she could have done, her just giving me the ideas she would have done but didn't in the end, and I'm just showing her that everything works. And generally I made sure that they aren't as afraid anymore to do something wrong, because that's important, because there is no wrong move. Yeah. And she said, combat, it always feels like I am not useful enough. And I showed her that she in fact is pretty useful in combat, but not in the same measure that the others are, right? Everyone has their place in combat. We have a Paladin Dragonborn, a tank. That dude's effectiveness is not measured by the damage he deals. While he deals a lot of damage when he smites or uses inflict wounds or something,
but the damage he can soak up for the party is a huge deal.
Yeah, that's his main objective. He is supposed to be up close with the enemy and be the one that's being hit, because he's the hardest to hit out of the group. Well, next to the monk, he has the most HP.
Yeah.
The monk, for example, we have is an archer. He's a Kensei monk that uses his bow. So, for example, if there would be more than one enemy, his objective is killing those that the tank can't get to. Those that have free hitting range on everything. That's his objectives. So he deals a lot of damage. We have a rogue sorcerer multiclass. His objective isn't to deal much damage in a round, like the monk. The monk's objective is to deal like 15 damage a round. So they have a constant damage output. The rogue's more or less objective is to make sure that he doesn't get hit, but he can disrupt the fight in any way.
Yeah.
And the thing is, because damage is the only number we really have to quantify how effective you are in combat, it's a representation of how good your hit was. And I made sure that just because it's a number, yes, if it's high, that's good, but you don't have to. She's an artificer, artillerist. She has these little cannons, and those are pretty useful because she has the flamethrower weapon, which, while it sounds like a great damage weapon, it is not. At least not for me. It's more of a control weapon. You put it somewhere and basically make sure that no one walks in that way. You can basically put the weapon in an alleyway and block off the alleyway because normal enemies won't run through that fire. You have the Arcane Ballista, which is the damage weapon of those three. That's supposed to be your damage. And you have this Protector Cannon that gives temp HP every round. And she was like, but I have to move into melee range to put that next to the Paladin. I'm like, why? The cannon can be so small that you can hold it in your hand. I would allow you to throw it, not like 100 feet far, but
maybe like a dagger range or something.
20 to 30 range. Yeah, sure, you can throw that. It even has legs. It can walk if you miss the throw. So that's not even a problem. And we went through the character sheet and looked a little bit on what she can do. So basically these check-ins were so I can see what maybe I am doing wrong or what I can do to help them. And some stuff were mechanical things. Like, for example, our monk has the aberrant dragon mark tattoos or whatever. And those allow spell casting. But he's a monk. He doesn't have a spell casting feature. So that feature gets useless. So he said, hey, can we maybe change that in some way? Either I get to cast the spells with key or we change the feature altogether, everything around that. And I'm like, yeah, sure, we can do that. That's totally fine. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to make the game fun for you. And if that makes the game more fun, that's what I'm doing. Right? Yeah. I would change that instantly for you.
All right. So shall we get into today's topic?
Yeah. Let's meet Andrew and Thomas.
So we are back now, and with us today are our two guests. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Who are you? How did you get into TTRPGs? What kept you in the hobby? All that kind of stuff.
I'll go first on this one, since I got Thomas into tabletop RPGs, so it makes sense that I'll go first. My name is Andrew. I got into tabletop RPGs because my dad was a tabletop RPGer, but since the very, very beginning, and he always told me stories about how he and his friends would play and all that stuff. And I grew up, wanting to play, and then around 8 or 10 years old, I started I joined my first game. It was Rollmaster, which is an interesting game for a beginner 8 to 10 year old. It's very complicated, very math heavy, but it's also very good role playing wise. And my dad pretty much did all the calculations and then just said, what do you want to do? This is what happens, all that stuff, and made it fun for us. But ever since then, I've been hooked. People keep waiting for me to grow out of it. I'm not going to. In fact, I just doubled down in it when I was in 2016 when I decided to start my own business. And with that, I will hand it off to Thomas.
Yeah, so like you said, and Andrew got me into it. I think he was more surprised that I said yes than anything else that first day. But yeah, ever since then, I started with 3.5. That was what we mostly played in high school. And then I think shortly after high school is when Andrew came out with Heroes of Gallipae, 1.5, I believe. And we've been basically playing his game ever since. So yeah, I love it. It's great.
Like Andrew said, there's people telling you that's a phase, you will grow out of that. I have been told the same thing. I just said, nope, I will stay with this as long as I can. And if I'm playing this when I'm 80 years old, I want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope I can achieve that as well. It's just so much fun.
Yeah. These games, they are more than games for me. I think you both would agree that, or you all three would agree that while they are games, right? TTRPG has role-playing game, but they are more than that. They are, especially for me who wanted to be a movie director, the perfect way to tell the stories I never got to tell through camera and at a table just. Well,
yeah, and even more than that, it just gets friends together or people you don't know yet together and forging friendships in that way. It's just a lot of possibilities you can have.
It's a lot of social games. You learn so many things about people. You learn how to communicate with people. Basically, when we started this podcast, these games are great, and I think we all four agree on that.
Yeah.
One of those games is the one we will be talking today about, which is the Trail of Heroes. So, one of you, can you tell me about that? What is it about? How, well, explain to me what is this game?
Trail of Heroes is my short pitch is Trail of Heroes is a high fantasy tabletop role-playing game that focuses on replayability and customization rather than worrying about being overly simplified. It was supposed to originally be way simpler than D&D, but that kind of went out the window as I progressed. And I don't think it's too complicated. I don't think it's any more complicated than what I hear from like Pathfinder and Pathfinder 2, but I don't know because I've never tried those systems, so I can't say for sure. But yeah, it's a little bit crunchy, but it's also very customizable, and you could go, like, I've been playing this game in a reasonably recent form for at least 10 years, and I have yet to come across a time where I'm out of ways to build a party or even out of ways to build a character. There's just so many ways to build characters and build parties.
That sounds great.
Do you have anything to add, Thomas?
No, that sums it up.
I will say it's a D percentile system. That is important to say, apparently.
Mm-hmm. And you said that you played this or had this idea for a very long time. Where exactly did this idea come from, and what made you develop this idea further?
Well, the idea was brewing in my mind for most of the time I've played tabletop RPGs, but in 6th grade, my math teacher said, I'm going to ask you guys to each make a game that has math in it, whether that's just numbers on a die or whatever. It has to have math. That was the only
Rule.
that was the only rule. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to make a tabletop role-playing game. So 3 weeks later, I had 5 pages of my rules, or maybe it was like, yeah, it had to be more than that. It had to be at least 10. And I came into the classroom, and I don't think any of us ever, we were supposed to play it with the people around the room and in the class, and I don't think we even got to start playing it once because everyone was supposed to read the rules first. And my rules were so long and complicated, no one got to actually play the game. But I did get an A, and it prompted me to continue, because at that time, I don't think 3.0 had come out yet, and we were unhappy with Rollmaster for a decision they had made in their next version. I think I'm not really sure, and so I was just out of options that I liked. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to finish this and I'm going to publish it one day. And my dad's like, no, you're not. You're not. Don't do it. It's just gonna. And I'm like, no, I'm doing it. And in 2013. I published the first version of this game, which was Heroes of Gallipae at that time, and I've been going since then.
Nice, very nice. You said that you developed this game in 6th grade, and without making any assumptions about your age, that's a long time, probably.
Yes, 21 years.
21 years, okay. What do you remember about this first draft you did back then, and how was it like You said that there were a lot of rules, 10 pages, which is, for a sixth grader, probably a lot to write about a game, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, when I remember what I did in sixth grade, I ate dirt. Probably not, but like,
checks out.
In comparison, I probably didn't write 10 pages of rules for a game. Though I have to say that I kind of always also wanted to make my own games, and I think that's also one of the reasons I came to TTRPGs, because while the rules are there, you can basically add the game on it itself. You have the basis, and then you can play the game on top of that with the story you create, with maybe homebrew rules you add and all that stuff. So, back to your sixth grade draft. How did that first draft look, in your opinion? From your perspective now, was it good?
No. It was a crude first draft that I put together in a hasty manner because, you really do need more than like 3 weeks to make a tabletop role-playing game. You really do. And I think if I had had the time, I could have made it good. But, first of all, it wasn't going to be good until I had at least play tested it a couple of times. That just doesn't happen. So, I mean, there were things like everybody had 100 hit points, and they did 1 to 100 damage, and the monsters had all did 1 to 50 damage. It was very simple. Very, very, very basic, and it was way too dangerous for the players. I remember my cousin, her first intro to tabletop role-playing games was my game in an early stage, and she had an archer, and the archer fumbled, which meant it had 1 to 100. I don't remember what the percent chance was that it would hit itself with its own weapon from a fumble, but there was a percent chance, and she rolled right in there, and then she rolled 100 on the damage, and she killed herself with her own bow.
Oh boy, yeah.
Which was an interesting eye opener for me. But and then I think there were like 5 different types of monsters and 3 types of demons, and none of them were named, and there was no lore behind it. It was just a very rough copy, very, very crude. It got me excited in it, and I just kept going. And even though my dad kept telling me, no, you're not going to finish this. No, this is never going to happen. He also looked at it and goes, what about this? So he wasn't completely just disregarding everything. He was also helping me.
And within these 21 years of developing this game, I bet a lot of stuff has changed over the years. But is there anything that didn't change at all, or just in a slight manner?
That's a good question. And I looked at that, and I was thinking about that before, and then I got distracted.
It's always been D percentile.
Yes.
That would be a constant.
Yes, it has always been D percentile. Yes. The defensive system has always been the same. My game is Trail of Heroes is a very defensive based system. I like to think of 5th edition and other D&Ds as a rush to kill, because if you don't kill fast, you're going to get killed. This is sometimes you can take your time. Sometimes you really can't, but sometimes you can, because as defensive stats, there's defense, armor, and dodge, and then of course health. And you can focus in any of the 3 or combinations of the 3, and that has always been there: the armor, defense, and dodge.
Nice. Can I quickly intersect with a short question there?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's percentile system, and just throwing the simple question out there, why? Not that I don't like percentile systems, but they are, let's say, the big 2 type of dice systems are D100s and D20s. Why did you go for a D100 system at the beginning?
Because it's easier to balance, in my opinion. And there's more options. You get more leeway when you're creating your monsters and your characters as well. And that's something that when I went back to D&D every now and then, I was like, oh, I'm stuck with this D20. I want to give him bonuses, but I don't want to give him that many bonuses. But yeah, so D percentile is a little bit more flexible in my opinion. I'm not sure if the math supports that, but it just seems to be.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that. Now comes a big question. What makes Trail of Heroes unique and special?
I'm going to let Thomas talk about this one first.
Well,
Throw you under the bus, Thomas.
Yeah. No, it's I love it. Like I said, I started playing 3.5 back in the day. And like Andy said, it was very, very fast paced. I think my first party got killed by a fireball. The first run up. But yeah, I like Trail of Heroes because basically your imagination is the limit when you're building characters, and you don't have to stick with the same imagination. Change, like if you want to go, if you have a rogue or an archer, if you want to go more melee, you can pump that character with melee stats basically later down the line. I've always had a big imagination. This game definitely helps put that into reality.
Yeah, and to say more about that specific instance with the archers, when he said rogue or archer, that's because archers are the thieves / rogues of the game, and they can actually be built several different ways, like he touched on. When you level up, it's a point buy system. Let's get that out of the way because that's important for me to talk about this. So you can spend either 10 points in standard abilities, which is things like archery and stuff like that, or you can, and 5 points in thieving abilities, or you can spend 10 points in thieving abilities and 5 points in standard ability. And you get to switch that up every level, which is what I think Thomas was.
And you can also multi-class, which I like a
lot. Not in this game. That's basic, Thomas. That's basic. Oh, yeah. Basic and advanced, not standard.
Yeah, that's true.
For those of you who are confused by that statement, I have 3 versions of this game. 2 of them are still completely in testing stage. The one we're talking about today is Trail of Heroes Standard, and then we've also got Trail of Heroes Basic, which is supposed to be much less complicated, and then Trail of Heroes Advanced, which is, I don't care how complicated it is, I want to be able to do whatever I want.
Nice.
You can't multi-class, but you can do whatever you want with your class. Like my dad, his first playtest in my game, he made something that I would not have thought of, which was a Boarfolk Emberwinds Druid. So the Boarfolk are not caster class, are not a caster race, not good at it. And he went with them because they're really good at melee. So an Emberwinds is a right up impersonal spell. And he wanted to have a character that could survive in right up in person while he's casting those spells. And it worked. I'm like, oh, okay. And then people just started opening my eyes to different builds that I'm like, I never thought that would work. And that's what I love about this game that makes it so different is even the designer that made the game from the beginning is constantly getting surprised with either a new character build or a new party build. Like my friend Drew, he made a party completely out of ranged people, whether they were archers or all hands, which is like a jack of all trades, just as it sounds, whether they be archers or all hands or magic users. Everyone was ranged. There were no tanks, no physical, or not physical, no tanks, no up front and personal people. Everything was ranged. And I'm like, dude, you're going to get a TPK so fast. He didn't. It was just amazingly awesome. He just cut straight through the dungeon, and I'm like, okay. But yeah, you don't need a healer. because potions work. Well, depending on the GM, potions can work to replace a healer because there's no such thing as a opportunity attack or attack with opportunity. The potions take a move action to drink, so you can still attack and take a potion. And they're relatively cheap, and at least the way I run the game, you can buy as many as you want within reason. Like, I'm not going to let you buy 2,000 extra healing potions, but, if you want 100 of them, that's fine. And then you get to go and, the opportunities are endless. I've even had people make tanky mages, like people who can't do any damage but are not going to ever die because they usually can't get hit, and if they do get hit, they've got enough armor to survive. And I touched on this before, but the difference, it's important to note the difference between defense and armor and dodge. Armor is damage reduction, defense is how hard it is to hit someone, and then dodge is even if they get past the defense, it's a % chance to miss. Anyway, however, caveat there, dodge does not work against critical hits.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm ranting, so Thomas, say something else.
I like dodge a lot. I had a Cyclops back in the day that had a 2 dodge, and I think 3 attacks in a row he got a 2 or less on a D100. So
roll 20. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, and it adds a lot of character to the fight. Not just a roll and hit aspect.
Yeah, I have to say the roll to hit. I think for me the biggest problem of D&D is the AC. I just don't like that it's so passive, that you have to do nothing to not get hit. The enemy just has to roll and hit a DC. That's your AC, and that's it. And I get why you do it as a designer. I can understand this design decision, but I don't like it when I'm not the one defending or dodging, and just the modifier decides that for me. I would rather roll a dice with an AC modifier to see if I overshoot. Like if everything that is above AC 10, just a modifier to my roll with a D20, I would be more happy than having a 10 plus whatever you have on your AC. That's what I appreciate about your game, that basically defending is more active and not just a passive thing that happens and I don't have to roll for it. It's not just a stat I have somewhere. It's really in the face. I know I have to roll for it. I can fail it, but I can also succeed on it. And it's not only up to my enemy to see if they can hit me. But Niels,
yeah,
I know who would love to play this game. For the things we've heard so far is John.
Mm-hmm.
He's the munchkin in our group, but in the way that he always tries to find the wackiest, most strongest builds he finds. Like characters that should never work, but do. And we all hate him for it, but we all love it as well, because it's so crazy to seeing a rogue in full plate armor.
Yeah, he would find weird character concepts and just...
Good, send him our way.
Because every time I look at a character when he's playing in one of my games, I just think, how in the hell would this work? And then he's basically rampaging through any encounter I throw at him, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? How? It shouldn't work, but how do you make it work? It's just incredible.
Okay, so now you've touched on 2 focus points, in my opinion, the replayability and the customization. So those 2 are design choices, right? Those are 2 focus points you've did. Individually, for each of those focus points, why did you choose those 2? Why are they the foundation of what the game is about?
That's a good question. Because when I was playing D&D, I played D&D 3rd edition to 3.5 edition until 4E came out. So I had a lot of experience with 3 and 3.5E. And what I got out of that was there's only so much you can do. And it bugged me because I felt myself getting burnt out because I had tried everything. Like there's a billion extra content books from 3rd edition and 3.5. And that's something that a lot of people I've heard complain about. But you can only bring so many of them to the table at once. In my opinion, you really had to pick and choose, because otherwise you're going to have hundreds of books that the players are going to be flipping through to create a character, and then they're like, okay, here's my character, and I'm like, I don't remember that. They're like, oh, is this book, and this book? And I'm like, so without the extra books, I'm still able to do more and not get burnt out. It was just the idea that I have to purchase hundreds of books to not get burnt out in D&D. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna fix that.
So we talked about what your focus points were and so on and so forth, all the interesting things that make Trail of Heroes unique. So how does the game actually works? What are the mechanics, the dice engine?
How specific are we getting?
How specific you ever want to be.
Yeah.
The first thing we talked about is already it is a D100 system, right? That's a good starting point. So the D100 is the main dice you roll for everything.
Sorta.
Okay?
Yeah.
The D100 is sort of the main die, but when it comes to attack, all bets are off.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. When it comes to damage, all bets are off. So you start with 3 different methods of trying to hit someone. There's attack, ranged, and casting accuracy. Casting accuracy is obviously for spells, although certain spells in certain conditions don't require casting accuracy. Ranged is for any physical ranged attack. And then attack is for any physical melee attack. Now, if you're using a spell that is a melee spell, that's still casting accuracy. That way your mage doesn't have to pump attack, which they start with crappy attack. And you roll the D percentile, add those numbers, whichever is relevant, and then you try to get above the defense. If you hit and the opponent has dodge, they roll dodge. Not everyone has dodge. That was originally supposed to be just for a couple of types of monsters and archers, but I've made it so just about anyone can have it, especially with magic items. And then there's the damage, which is range damage, attack damage, and spell damage. If you're a fighter or an archer, you can specialize in your weapon for both to hit and damage. If you're a caster, you can specialize in a spell. And it's because of that I've had a mage that has focused in the first level spell Firebolt, and by the time he was 16th level, which is legendary level by the way, by the time he was 16th level, he was throwing a Firebolt that did 76 d6.
That sounds like a lot.
And it was beautiful, because I didn't even have that many dice at the time.
76 d6.
That's 266 average damage.
Yeah.
And there were some other parts of that build that made it kind of overpowered, but I won't really go into that. But yeah, you can focus in things, and that's what I like. Like, he had a fireball that did a shit ton of damage, but he also had the firebolt that did way more damage to one person than the fireball did to any one person. The fireball did more damage all together, but the firebolt did more to a single person. And that's why it's great that you can specialize in things. And that was a first level spell, but you can also specialize in higher level spells and be just as effective. Like, I had another mage who specialized in Ice Blast, which I ripped straight out of Diablo 2. It's a little different, but he ended up doing massive amounts of damage to someone, and if they didn't die, they would be frozen solid for 3 rounds. I think I nerfed that one.
3 rounds sounds like a lot.
I think it was a 3rd level spell, which spells in this game only go up to 5th level. Yeah, you had to be 8th level out of 16 levels to cast that spell. So it's definitely... Yeah, he was up against higher opponents, and the big downfall of that is not only can you not specialize in it for the first 8 levels, the other downside of that is it's only one monster. At that point, I'm hitting you with mobs of decently powerful monsters because you can handle it. And my goal as a GM is to make it a good story. And the easiest way to do that is make it where the players feel like their characters are in danger. Not to actually kill them, but make them feel like they're in danger.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that. Danger, especially through combat, is one of the best driving forces I can think of for any good story.
It adds a ton of suspense to it.
Yeah.
To everything you do. Always having the possibility of, I might die right now if I don't act according to my environment.
Does Thomas have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I've never really dabbled in GMing or DMing.
Oh,
I've mostly been a player. I do a lot of play testing.
But that's perfect, because then I can ask you,
There you
how
go.
does the game feel as a player?
I think it's very smooth. It does take a bit of a learning curve in the beginning, but that's all games. I thought it was pretty intuitive to put together a basic character, and then once you put your first character together, then that's when you go crazy like your friend and put all those weird combinations into play, and all of a sudden you have this this character that can't have anywhere else in your party, and it works magically. That's always a good feeling. Yeah, no, I love doing it. I really like the no attacks of opportunity that always got on my nerves when I was playing D&D. And then, I like it for my party, but not for the monsters. And then I like being able to build the character from a base level. I think that's my other good favorite part of it. You can't really build a character in D&D. It's you get your base and you add health to them, but that's basically it. There's no other building options. So it gets you more invested in your characters, care more about your party. Also makes for a better story.
And having said about comparing some parts of your game towards other big tabletop RPGs, in overall the whole game, which system or role set is it most comparable if you're...
Well, I mean, since the majority of my work in this game was done during the days of 3.0 and 3.5 when they were king, I think I took a lot of inspiration from them. I fixed a lot of things that I saw wrong with them, but I think it would probably compare most with 3.5 D&D. For most of my life, I've been very sheltered with other systems, and I'm starting to branch out, but I'm realizing that my system is very different than what I'm finding. Granted, I'm still in the beginning stages of branching out. I play tested a couple of people's games. I didn't even remember who they were. It was back several years ago. I was trying to find out more about other games, see what I can compare my game to, see how I could explain it better to people. And I kind of struck out on that goal. I also like helping out smaller companies because I know how hard that is. I really don't know how it compares. I know there was a lot that I had that compared to Rollmaster in the very beginning, because that was most of what I had played. But then, like I said, the very beginning is just so drastically different than what I have now. I pulled a lot from Diablo 2. I pulled a lot from Diablo 1 as well. I pulled a lot from 3.5. I pulled a lot from Rollmaster. And I just took pieces from what I liked and tried to come up with my own spin off of everything that I took. It's very unrecognizable to what most people say. I really try to stay away from so what's this game like? And I'm like, it's like it. I don't like the trend of this game is like this game, because no, there's very few games that are like such and such game.
Yeah, the thing that irks me always when people say, I have a game that's like D&D. And then I'm like, well, I like D&D. Why don't I play D&D instead? So basically saying to me, it's not D&D and these are the things that it's not. So giving me a list of games which it more or less took as inspiration, improved on, changed, is the best way to advertise your game, because then I have something to jump off, but I also can see what you changed, what makes your game unique. And that's what I have to say I liked about this episode already, because you guys always were like, okay, yeah, the systems everybody knows, we can talk about those, but our system does it completely differently in these aspects, and that's why we are good. And that's why I can see that the game you have is different from those systems. Your system gives me a new experience those systems can't provide, which is the most important part. That's what I have been seeing so far from your game, that it's unique in the way that it takes a lot of things from different games, like everybody takes inspiration somewhere, right? But you are always talking about what you changed, what the big focus points of your game are. And that way people can actually see the game for what it is and not what it not is or what it's like, but what it is. So... Is there anything we missed talking about? Anything you guys want to now talk about? Anything that wasn't covered in this discussion already?
I did want to bring up one thing, Andy. I think from having built worlds in 2 different systems now, of the systems that I've used to build worlds, this system that we have for Trail of Heroes allows for a better world building adventure. I wanted to say anything else because I haven't played very many games, but of the games that I've played, I've had a better ability to build the world that I want, essentially, which I've always liked world games, like PC-wise and Xbox-wise and all that. So that part I also really enjoy.
Then I want to ask a question about that before we come to finishing up this episode. How does it do that? How does it support building your world, exploring that world? How would you say does the game support that pillar of role-playing?
Andy created a lot of lore behind all the characters, and it just gives you a really good building block layer, basically, and it makes it really easy to build up rather than sideways.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest thing.
Nice.
So
okay.
We are about to start our Patreon on the 28th of this month. We will be posting a ton of free material and a ton of patron-only material for different levels. And if anyone would like to get a notification of when our Patreon launches, just as a reminder, they can email us at lordsofgallipae@gmail.com. That's Gallipae is spelled Gallipae @gmail.com. And what we'll do is we'll just set aside that email and then we'll reply to everyone because we were not doing well with our mailing list. But and other than that, now is actually the perfect time to buy our games specifically, or our games specifically the higher tiers, because what we do right now with our sales method is you purchase, let's say, the Mithril members, just for an example. That's the highest tier. Basically, what you're going to get is you're going to get the base rules with any changes that we ever make. You're also going to get any extra content at all, period. Any extra content, past, present, or future. Now, the reason that it makes it the perfect time to buy that tier is because on the 28th, we're going to switch the way we sell things to just the base rules and all the updates, and then you buy the extra content separately. However, anyone that purchases the Mithril members before that date still gets grandfathered in and gets all the extra content ever. And that includes all the Patreon content, because our Patreon page is only going to have content about Trail of Heroes standards. So that's why it's a really good idea to go there. The website that you can get it at is www.gallipae.com. Again, that's GALLIPAE.
Twitter account?
So, yeah it's at Lords LLC.
The most important part about that, every link, every ad you provide here, obviously you will find in the description of this episode. So if anyone wants to find out about this more, go to the Twitter account of these guys, talk to them. They are very nice, as you heard today. They have a website. Yeah, they have a great game. I've actually bought the game. I have looked through it. I still have to find a group to play it. But from what I've heard today, I'm very excited to actually start a group in it. It sounds like a great game to me so far.
That's awesome.
Yeah, everything will be found in the description again. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at DoubleDM We have a Discord server you can find in our link tree where you can actually sign up for episodes like these guys did. And that's about it for today. And it was great to have you guys on. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks to the people for listening. And we will hear you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.